Marcus Thorne watched the replay on his phone for the 10th time. It was a perfect, infuriating loop. The massive black Escalade, its tinted windows reflecting the afternoon sun, cutting the corner of the private drive with arrogant certainty, and the resulting graze, a sound like a chalk scrape amplified 1,000 times as its rear bumper snagged the protective aluminum of the new swing gate. The gate, a custom-fabricated solution he and 3 other cul-de-sac residents had paid a premium for, screamed a metallic protest every time. This wasn't an accident. This was the 3rd time in 6 weeks, and each incident was a deliberate, 2-second transgression committed by the same person, Brenda Sterling, the self-appointed Queen Regent of the Willow Creek Estates HOA, and more pointedly the only resident who saw their quiet, low-traffic crescent as a convenient shortcut to bypass the annoying light cluster on the main boulevard. Marcus leaned against the sturdy, cedar-clad support post, running a gloved hand over the fresh, foot-long scrape. It was deeper this time, a gouge through the powder coat and clear into the raw metal. It looked less like an accidental brush and more like a territorial marking. His stomach, usually a calm sea of analytical processing, churned with a mixture of cold frustration and white-hot justifiable fury. He pulled his phone and dialed. It rang twice before a sharp, dismissive voice answered. "Brenda, it's Marcus Thorne. My gate, the one you use as a private bypass, has been damaged again. The timestamp on the feed is 3:05 p.m. your vehicle. Black Escalade. I have the video, and I think we both know what it shows." The air crackled with a manufactured indignation that Marcus had come to recognize as her default defense mechanism. "Mr. Thorne, you are accusing a board member of vandalism? Do you have any idea how serious that is? I was nowhere near your unauthorized intrusion on community property at that time. I had a dental appointment." "Brenda," Marcus continued, his voice low and devoid of inflection, a dangerous calm settling over him. He was a software architect by trade. He dealt in facts, data, and the immutable logic of if-then statements. He wasn't equipped for theatrical lies. "The video shows your license plate, your personalized vanity plate, Queens, passing through the gate opening at 34 miles per hour. Your dental appointment must have been at the front of the subdivision, because you were definitely cutting through the back 40 to get there faster. And for the record, the gate is not unauthorized. It was approved by the Architectural Review Committee in 2018, 3 years before you moved in." A sharp intake of breath hissed over the line. "The ARC is a revolving door, Marcus. And even if it was approved, that doesn't excuse you installing what amounts to a cheap carnival ride blocking a communal thoroughfare. People get impatient. Wear and tear happens. If you want to put up cheap junk, expect cheap results." "Cheap junk cost $4,000, Marcus corrected, his jaw tightening. "And the wear and tear is solely due to your negligence and deliberate shortcutting. I'm sending the invoice for the repair directly to you. I expect payment within 7 days, or I'm presenting this video, along with the previous 2 incidents and your statement just now, to the HOA's legal committee." He could practically hear her manicured nails drumming on marble. "You'll be wasting your time, dear. I am the legal committee, and the only thing they'll approve is the fine for your gate being non-compliant with the new color palette. Have a wonderful evening." The line clicked dead. Marcus stood there, the cool metal of the gatepost radiating contempt. This was beyond the pale. This wasn't about a shortcut. It was about dominance. It was about Brenda establishing that her time, her convenience, and her sense of entitlement superseded the property rights, rules, and finances of everyone else in the community. She was treating his home like a personal doormat. He spent the next 2 days playing by the rules. He compiled a dossier, time-stamped videos, repair quotes, the original ARC approval documents, and a formal complaint detailing Brenda's abuse of her board position. He emailed it to the entire HOA board, minus Brenda. The response, when it finally arrived, was a single curt email from the HOA president, Gary, an elderly man who seemed perpetually terrified of confronting anyone, least of all Brenda. Subject, Gate Incident Marcus. While we sympathize, your private gate, which you elected to install, is technically an obstruction. Brenda assures us that any damage is incidental, and a reflection of the gate's low quality, not her driving. The board will not arbitrate a private dispute or pay for the repair. Furthermore, Brenda is drafting a motion to require all private gate installations to adhere to a revised, stricter set of guidelines, which may require you to remove your current structure altogether. We suggest you drop this. Marcus closed his laptop, the soft thud sounding like a gavel striking a verdict. His hands were shaking, but not from rage anymore. It was the adrenaline rush of a man who realized he was finally free of the tiresome constraints of bureaucracy. The game was over. Brenda had won the HOA skirmish. But Brenda had made a fundamental error. She had assumed the solution to the problem would be found in the rule books she manipulated. She hadn't realized that the man she was currently humiliating was a self-taught, high-end automation expert. Marcus had spent his career building systems that monitored, learned, and responded to user behavior, systems that couldn't be argued with, reasoned with, or overruled by a petty tyrant. He walked out to the gate, not with a repair kit, but with a toolbox packed with electronics. He was no longer trying to protect the gate from her. He was going to use her constant, predictable aggression against her. He was going to turn her perfect, entitled routine into her greatest vulnerability. The first step was data acquisition. Over the next 4 hours, Marcus replaced the standard, cheap proximity sensors, the kind that merely detected a mass of metal and opened the gate, with a bespoke system of his own design. He installed 2 sets of industrial-grade laser tripwires, barely visible even if you knew where to look, set at varying heights, capable of triangulating the exact lateral position of a vehicle to within 1/4 of an inch. He also embedded a custom-calibrated Doppler radar sensor behind the cedar cladding, allowing him to measure the precise speed of the incoming vehicle. All of this fed into a heavily shielded, waterproof mini-PC buried beneath the shrubbery, powered by its own discrete solar panel. Let's see how predictable you are. Brenda, he muttered, running a diagnostic sequence that confirmed the sensors were reporting live, clean data back to his home network. For the next week, the gate remained damaged, the long scrape mocking him, but Marcus ignored it. He was busy, hunched over his 4-monitor workstation, watching his custom terminal application fill up with data. Every entry, every exit was logged, time, speed, angle. He saw the other neighbors, the ones who had paid their share, approach the gate, stop their cars, enter their keypad codes, and wait patiently for the gate to fully open before driving through, slowly and deliberately. Their data points were clean, low speed, and centered. Then there was Brenda. Brenda's data was a jagged, arrogant anomaly. Every single time, the speed was between 30 and 35 mph. The angle was always a sharp, consistent cut to the right, shaving the corner to minimize the deceleration required. She never waited for the gate to fully open. She drove through the gate's closing arc the moment the opening sensor light turned green. Her behavior was so consistent, so arrogant, that it was mathematically defined. Marcus isolated the data for her specific vehicle ID, which he had assigned based on the unique Doppler signature of her massive SUV. He created a 3D simulation based on her average speed and angle. The simulation showed the virtual Escalade clipping the gate corner with a terrifying, exact precision. It was not random. It was her signature move. On day 7, Marcus was in his basement, his eyes glowing in the monitor light. He had enough data points to build a high-confidence predictive model. Probability of corner clip at 32 mph and 15 degree, angle 99.8%. He minimized the sensor. Log and opened the CAD schematics for the gate's main hydraulic system. He wasn't replacing the gate. He was replacing its brain. He had engineered a system he called the Enforcer. It was a custom controller, hardwired into the gate's main hydraulic line, bypassing the original control box entirely. The Enforcer had a single purpose: to override the standard safety sensors only when the incoming vehicle matched Brenda's specific behavioral profile. If the incoming vehicle was slow, centered, and waited for the gate to fully open, it acted like a normal gate. But if the Enforcer detected the speed, 30+ mph, the angle, 15-degree cut, and the precise, arrogant moment of entry, it would calculate the car's exact projected location half a second into the future. And that's when it would act. Marcus pulled an all-nighter, welding a new, small bracket to the inside of the main gate post, a silent, black, industrial-grade steel block that was barely visible unless you knew it was there. He then installed a specialized, rapid-response pneumatic actuator not to stop the gate, but to slightly and instantaneously alter its speed in one direction. The key was not to make the gate hit her car. That would be criminal, and she would win the insurance and legal battle. The key was to make her car hit the gate, but under new, precise, and entirely unexpected conditions. He uploaded the final, highly optimized code into the. Brenda Sterling's phone vibrated, lighting up the distressed leather of her Escalade's center console. She was already driving 70 in a 45 zone, gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. The noise, the sickening, tearing crunch, was still ringing in her ears. It wasn't the sound of an aggressive merge or a minor scuff. It was the sound of something expensive breaking catastrophically. The entire rear of the vehicle felt wrong, unbalanced. It was a brand-new Escalade, custom-ordered, and now it felt like a dented can. She risked a glance down. The text was from Marcus Thorne. The 3 photos that loaded made her heart seize up, a bitter, icy ball of pure, toxic fury. The first photo was a close-up of his gate. A faint, dusty scrape was visible on the aluminum, barely worse than before. Infuriating. The second was the ground beneath the gate. It was pristine, save for a massive, jet-black shard of plastic and chromed metal, the fractured remnants of her Escalade's bumper cover, the sheer size of which screamed major structural damage. The third photo was Marcus's text. Just found this large chunk of debris by the gate. I'm happy to hold on to this for your insurance claim. Please let me know if you'd like me to send you the video showing your reckless driving causing this damage to your vehicle, as I will be using it to ensure I am not held responsible for any damage to my property. Reckless driving? She shrieked, slamming her hand onto the steering wheel. The sheer audacious nerve of the man. He knew! He had to know! But how? The gate had moved. She had driven that route 1,000 times, threading the gap with the expertise of a professional driver. It was the gate. It had malfunctioned. It had to have been his faulty, cheap junk, just as she had told Gary. Brenda swerved into her own driveway, hitting the curb hard enough to jostle the half-empty bottle of rosé in the cup holder. She grabbed her phone and immediately called her personal assistant. Skipping over Marcus, direct confrontation was for the help. Not for the Queen. Get me the most ruthless litigation attorney in the state, she barked into the phone. No, not for the HOA. This is personal property damage. I want Marcus Thorne sued for $50,000 for gross negligence and willful property damage. Ms. Sterling, I'm not sure we can call it willful without evidence that he manually... He wrote a code, you idiot! He's a software architect. He programmed that gate to hit me. And if you can't get me a lawyer who understands the nuances of an HOA board member being targeted by an inferior resident, you're fired. She hung up and stared at the front of her house, a sprawling, aggressively manicured stucco mansion. Her home was an image of control. Marcus's home, though perfectly nice, was always too quiet, too minimalist, too smart. That was it. He was a geek, a digital hermit who thought he could outsmart the real-world power structure. She would show him. 15 minutes later, Marcus's phone began to ring. He was already expecting it. He had the number blocked, but he answered anyway. The conversation automatically recorded and logged by his home system. You. Arrogant. Little. Pest. Brenda's voice hit him like a sonic boom, laced with venom and the raw panic of a woman whose material comfort had just been threatened. You think you're so clever, don't you? I just got off the phone with my lawyer. This isn't vandalism, Marcus. This is attempted assault with a dangerous weapon, your faulty gate. You deliberately obstructed my vehicle! I know you did something to that mechanism. Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, a slow, predatory calmness settling over him. Good afternoon, Brenda. If you're speaking with counsel, you should be advised that anything you say to me could be used in discovery. Save your law school dramatics. I want an apology. I want the name of your insurance company for this totaled vehicle, and I want that ugly aluminum monstrosity of a gate removed by sundown tomorrow. Let's stick to facts, Brenda, Marcus said, his voice measured and professional. My gate which cost $4,000 and was approved by the ARC, was stationary at the moment of impact. Your vehicle was moving at a measured 33 miles per hour in a 5-mile-per-hour gate access zone. The damage to your vehicle is the direct, sole consequence of your reckless driving and failure to follow established safety procedures, which require stopping and waiting for the gate to fully retract. It moved. I felt it. The gate operates via a hydraulic system, Marcus corrected smoothly. When a large, fast-moving object, such as your Escalade, collides with the gate, the impact force momentarily stalls the hydraulic motor. The gate is designed to absorb and redistribute that force, which is precisely why the damage to the gate is negligible, while the damage to your quarter panel and bumper, which are designed to crumple, is significant. This is simple physics, Brenda. You hit the gate. The data, the video, and the debris field all confirm this. He paused, letting the silence hang heavy. Speaking of damage, he continued, his tone shifting slightly, I've attached a new email to the thread with your previous HOA board response. It contains a repair estimate for your Escalade. Given your earlier statement that the wear and tear is solely due to the low quality of the property that was struck, I suggest you seek restitution from the manufacturer of the Cadillac bumper, as it appears to be incapable of withstanding a low-speed collision with an aluminum gate. As for the gate itself, I'm sending a final repair invoice for the aluminum resurfacing to your personal email as is customary. Have a wonderful day. He didn't wait for her reply, just terminated the call. Marcus knew the legal threats were mostly bluff, but they were the opening salvo of a new, far more dangerous conflict. Brenda wasn't going to let this go. She had lost face and she had lost material wealth. The next step would be procedural, designed to crush him under the weight of her political power within the HOA. It arrived the next morning, an official summons to an emergency HOA board hearing, scheduled for 7 p.m. that evening, concerning gross misconduct and unauthorized alterations to community safety infrastructure. The Willow Creek Estates clubhouse meeting room was sterile and aggressively air-conditioned. Marcus walked in, carrying his laptop bag and a thick binder. The board sat at a long cherrywood table. Gary, the nervous president. Robert, the retired dentist who always abstained. And, of course, Brenda, radiating a cold, palpable hostility. She wore a sharp, severe white pantsuit, a visual declaration of her purity and righteous indignation. Brenda launched into the offensive immediately. Ignoring the procedural opening, "We are not here to debate my driving. Gary," she stated, leaning forward, her voice controlled but sharp. "We are here because Mr. Thorne has violated the trust of this community. He installed a homemade, unapproved, and frankly malicious device onto his private gate, a gate that already obstructs community access, and that device was programmed to cause a severe accident to a board member's vehicle. I have incurred over $10,000 in damage, and the risk of injury was catastrophic. This is grounds for immediate financial penalty, removal of the structure, and potentially a criminal complaint." Gary dabbed his forehead with a napkin. "Marcus, did you alter the gate's function after the initial ARC approval?" Marcus opened his binder, pulling out a single sheet. "I did, but not in the way Brenda suggests. I enhanced the gate's monitoring and structural integrity. I was forced to because, as the video evidence clearly shows, the gate was repeatedly being struck by the same driver, who refused to acknowledge their fault." He calmly walked over to the TV monitor and plugged in his laptop. The board received my dossier detailing 3 previous impacts. Brenda claimed those were due to the gate's cheap quality. Well, now we have the 4th incident. Let's look at the data. He brought up the enforcer's data log. This graph shows the gate's operation for all cul-de-sac residents over the past 7 days. Note the green line. All other residents approach the gate, stop at the access panel, and proceed at under 5 miles per hour. Then we have the red spikes. Brenda's signature? Speed, consistently 30 to 35 miles per hour. Angle, a sharp 19-degree lateral cut. He then played the video of the previous day's incident. The board members watched in silence as the Escalade screamed up the road. In the video, the gate opens, but as the car cuts the corner, there is a barely perceptible stutter, a tiny hitch in the opening mechanism, and then the sickening crunch. Brenda glared. That proves it. That's stutter! You programmed that! That's manipulation! It's physics, Brenda, Marcus corrected, pulling up the CAD schematic of his enhancement. I replaced the gate's internal wiring and reinforced its structure to prevent repeated failure from high-speed impacts. When a multi-ton SUV collides with any hydraulic gate at high speed, the momentum shock can cause the system to momentarily stall before it corrects and resumes movement. It's a design feature, not a malicious code. He pointed at the gate on the screen. The gate itself, as you can see, suffered only minor cosmetic damage, the same cosmetic damage you previously inflicted. Your vehicle, however, sustained catastrophic damage because you deliberately drove it through a narrow opening at 6 times the safe speed limit, forcing your expensive bumper to take the full kinetic energy of the impact against a heavily reinforced, immovable object. He pulled out the final document. The repair quote for his gate, a meager $350 for resurfacing the aluminum powder coating. The single sharp woof Max had given at 1:17 a.m. had cost Marcus $250. The fine notification, tucked under his wiper blade, felt less like a procedural document and more like a declaration of war stamped onto his personal life. He didn't feel the cold, analytical satisfaction he'd felt after deploying the enforcer. This time, the heat was pure, protective rage. Max, a gentle 9-year-old golden retriever, sat at his feet, nudging Marcus's hand with a wet nose, sensing the shift in his owner's mood. Marcus scratched behind Max's ears, his eyes fixed on the documentation. "Your family, buddy," Marcus murmured. "And she just threatened family. That's a line you don't cross." This new front was insidious. The gate was about property and rules. The dog fine was about peace, tranquility, and the relentless application of personal malice under the guise of HOA authority. Brenda wasn't fighting the gate. She was trying to inflict stress and financial drain, hoping Marcus would crack. Marcus knew how these HOA fine systems worked. They were designed to be automated and difficult to challenge. He assumed Brenda had deployed a sophisticated commercial-grade acoustic monitoring array, the kind used by property management companies to enforce quiet hours across large developments. It likely included highly sensitive directional microphones hidden in common area foliage or disguised bird feeders. She was turning the entire community environment into an extension of her own personal surveillance state. He immediately went to work. The problem was no longer preventing physical damage. It was neutralizing acoustic surveillance. His first task was to identify the listening post. He took his laptop and a custom-built directional microphone antenna, a relic from an old satellite analysis project, and began walking the perimeter of his property just before dusk. He was looking for any unusual radio frequency signatures, any subtle changes in the ambient noise floor, or any perfectly placed landscaping that looked too bulky or too deliberate. It took him 3 hours, culminating in a walk past Brenda's sprawling, aggressively manicured estate. Tucked discreetly into the dense cluster of imported Japanese boxwoods lining the public path, Marcus found it, a small matte black housing, no bigger than a birdhouse, mounted high and angled perfectly toward his backyard. The HOA's official noise monitor. The sight of it, an authorized piece of equipment weaponized for private vengeance, was deeply unsettling. He went back inside and closed himself in his basement lab. The goal was twofold. 1, create a counter-system that made Max's inevitable. Occasional woof acoustically disappeared to the HOA monitoring equipment. And 2, find a way to weaponize that same equipment against the person who deployed it. Project Guardian was born. For the first part, he designed a system of localized, low-frequency sound masking. It wasn't about silence. It was about noise shaping. He took 3 high-fidelity industrial microspeakers, slim enough to be disguised as fence post caps. He paired them with a highly specialized microphone array, all wired into a Raspberry Pi running his custom audio analysis software, the Guardian's Core Logic, passive mode. The system constantly analyzed the ambient sound for the unique acoustic signature of a dog bark, a very specific frequency burst and amplitude pattern. Trigger. When Max barked, the internal microphone array would register the sound's origin and trigger the counter-response within 50 milliseconds. Active masking. The three external speakers would instantly emit a low-amplitude, non-annoying blanket of localized pink noise, calibrated precisely to the dominant frequencies of a golden retriever's bark. Crucially, the system was designed with inverse square law calculations. The masking sound was loud enough to saturate the acoustic signature at the distance of Brenda's monitor, about 150 feet away, but quiet enough that neighbors closer to Marcus would only hear a gentle shush or a brief wave of white noise. Nothing worth complaining about. Duration. The mask would last only 3 seconds, just long enough to obscure the signature and prevent the expensive acoustic monitoring system from registering a clear violation. He spent the rest of the night tuning the pink noise frequency, testing it repeatedly with recordings of Max's barks. The result was eerie, a sharp, clear bark next to him, which, when played back through the simulated monitor recording, sounded like nothing more than a momentary gust of wind or an indistinct thrum of background noise, unfinable, ambiguous and acoustically nullified. The next day, Marcus received a second violation notice from an anonymous email address, signed simply, "The Compliance Committee." Another $250 for a documented 3-second barking event at 4:32 a.m. He ignored it. He was done playing defense. That evening, he installed the 3 speaker caps and ran the ultra-thin wiring, embedding the Raspberry Pi control unit next to the gate's enforcer brain in the shrubbery. The Guardian was now online, protecting Max's freedom and Marcus's wallet. But Marcus was not just a defender, he was an architect of consequence. He couldn't fight Brenda with his own manually collected evidence. He needed to turn her own powerful, sensitive surveillance tools back on her. He realized the irony. Brenda had deployed a state-of-the-art surveillance system, but she herself was the most frequent high-amplitude noise polluter in the entire Crescent. Her house was the epicenter of late-night, vodka-fueled parties, loud pool maintenance, and the constant, high-decibel blare of her sound system, usually broadcasting terrible 80s rock ballads late into the night. Marcus didn't need to install new equipment. He only needed access to the data her system was already collecting. He spent the next 2 days focused solely on the acoustic monitor hidden in the boxwoods. He knew that commercial-grade systems, to avoid physical retrieval, would typically transmit data wirelessly to a central hub, most likely Brenda's personal office PC, given her direct involvement. He didn't hack the system in the traditional sense. He used his expertise to locate the monitoring hub's broadcast frequency and, crucially, its unencrypted diagnostic reporting channel. The data streaming from the HOA monitor was raw, unparsed, minute-by-minute acoustic amplitude data, neatly labeled by timestamp and overall decibel level. The system was only set to flag specific dog bark signatures for fines, but it recorded all loud events. Marcus wrote a new secondary script for the Guardian's Pi, a data siphon. It would silently and passively listen to the public broadcast frequency, copying the minute-by-minute decibel log from the HOA monitor before Brenda's system could analyze and purge it. Within 24 hours, the data started rolling in. The neighborhood, outside of the 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. quiet hours, was a symphony of normal life. Lawn mowers, children playing, distant traffic. Then there was Brenda's data set. Saturday, 1:45 a.m., 2:30 a.m., sustained noise levels of 78 to 85 dB, equivalent to a vacuum cleaner or loud TV, with distinct spikes to 95 dB, yelling, screaming, traced to the vicinity of her pool deck. Violation, excessive party noise, Monday, 8 a.m., 90 a.m., sustained noise levels of 68 dB directly from her 3 industrial-grade pool pumps and fountains, running constantly during breakfast hours, exceeding the HOA's daytime ambient noise limit of 65 dB for equipment. Violation, mechanical nuisance. Tuesday, 10:00 p.m. A sustained 90 dB event, the sound of her Escalade's horn being held down, presumably in frustration at a perceived inconvenience. Violation, public disturbance. Marcus compiled the log meticulously, correlating each timestamp with the HOA's own rules. He didn't just have one or two isolated incidents. He had a pattern, a documented history of relentless high-decibel noise pollution, all recorded and time-stamped by the very surveillance system Brenda had weaponized against him. He was ready. He waited until Friday night, 1 a.m. A quick check of his Guardian logs showed a massive, sustained 88 dB noise event coming from Brenda's pool deck, a full-blown late-night party. Simultaneously, Max, sleeping soundly in the corner, let out a soft, dreaming whimper. The Guardian's mic registered the whimper, instantly deployed the 3-second pink noise curtain, and the raw acoustic data registered only a vague, unidentifiable thrum at Brenda's monitor. Max was protected. Marcus walked back to his workstation. He crafted a final, devastating document. It was not a defense. It was a counteroffense. He titled it, Formal Complaint and Demand for Remediation. Violations of Article 4, Section B, Noise Nuisance. He addressed it to the entire HOA board, including Gary, Robert, and Brenda herself. He attached the meticulously formatted 3-page table of noise violations, all sourced from the raw data stream of the community's own acoustic monitoring system. The total number of violations tallied over the 72 hours of siphoned data, 28. He concluded with the calculation. As per the established fine schedule for noise violations set forth in the notice I received on date, and applying the same non-negotiable $250 fine per documented incident, Ms. Sterling's accrued liability to the Willow Creek Estates HOA to be paid in full to the HOA General Fund is $7,000. Why? He hit send, his heart pounding with the cold satisfaction of calculated revenge. The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle hum of his Guardian system. Marcus looked at Max, who was dreaming peacefully. He had turned Brenda's weapon against her, using her own rules and her own technology to deliver a single, massive, financially crippling fine. The gate was a $350 invoice. Max's woof was a $7,000 counterstrike. The battle for the rulebook was over. Marcus had not only the digital grenade Marcus launched, the formal complaint demanding a $7,000 fine against Brenda Sterling based on her own surveillance data, detonated precisely at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Marcus, sitting at his kitchen table sipping coffee, didn't need to check his email logs to know the system administrator at the HOA headquarters was having the worst morning of their career. The first response wasn't a return email. It was a furious, rapid-fire sequence of knocks that rattled his front door frame. Marcus opened it to find Brenda Sterling, not in a composed pantsuit but in gym clothes, her blonde hair a chaotic mess, her eyes blazing with an unhinged intensity he hadn't yet witnessed. She was flanked by Gary, the HOA president, who looked as if he was about to faint, and a large man in a cheap suit Marcus didn't recognize, clutching a clipboard. "You are a sick, paranoid little voyeur," Brenda spat, pointing a trembling finger at Marcus. "You hacked a corporate server. You stole private data. This is a criminal offense, Marcus. I've brought the community security consultant and he's ready to press charges." The man in the suit, whose name badge read Tony Security Operations, stepped forward with practiced menace. "Mr. Thorne, you are hereby ordered to immediately cease and desist all unauthorized access to HOA electronic assets. We have confirmed the timestamps on your complaint directly correlate to a massive data siphon event. This constitutes illegal wiretapping and cyber theft." Gary wrung his hands, his voice thin. "Marcus, please, this has gone too far." Brenda is right. The data looks compelling, but the method is the problem. If you hack the system, we'll both be liable. Just retract the fine and we'll consider dismissing the outstanding dog fines. Marcus stepped back, leaving the door wide open, his posture relaxed but firm. Max, sensing the stress, stood quietly behind him, his tail low. "Gentlemen, Ms. Sterling," Marcus said, his voice measured, overriding the rising panic in the entryway. "First, I will not retract the fine. The fine is valid, documented, and based on evidence collected by HOA property to monitor community compliance. Second, I accessed no private server and stole no data." He looked directly at Tony, the security consultant. Tony, perhaps you should verify your technical findings. I did not access the server. I accessed the unencrypted open broadcast diagnostic port of a communal sensor placed in public landscaping. That sensor transmits raw, minute-by-minute decibel readings publicly to facilitate easy remote diagnosis by any technician in the field with the correct frequency tuner. You made the channel open to the world. I simply listened. Tony's eyes narrowed, his bravado wavering. Commercial monitoring equipment often had such a feature, a necessary technical shortcut for technicians, but it was usually assumed no one in the general public was sophisticated enough to exploit it. That is still unauthorized interception, Tony stammered. Is it? Marcus challenged, pulling a single sheet of paper from his pocket. It was a printout of the HOA's own documentation for the acoustic monitor, which Marcus had downloaded from the manufacturer's public site. This document, supplied by your vendor, states, the device broadcasts raw data on Channel 4 for field diagnostic and maintenance purposes. User discretion is advised. This is not private data. This is a public radio signal. You broadcasted noise violations to the entire cul-de-sac. I merely recorded the noise violations you created, Brenda, which your board failed to address. Brenda stepped in, desperate to wrest back control of the narrative. This is a diversion. You're a stalker. You are using your technical skills to terrorize a board member. That gate incident, you admitted to altering the system. You intentionally created a hazard. The hazard was created by you driving 33 mph, Brenda, Marcus countered, never raising his voice. The gate was engineered to be robust. As for terrorizing you, I am simply applying your own rules, based on data collected by your own technology, to your own behavior. If you feel terrorized by the application of the noise rules, perhaps the rules themselves are too harsh, especially when applied to a single. Natural woof from my dog. Gary, seeing the technical and legal quicksand Tony was standing in, stepped in front of the consultant. Brenda, Marcus, that's enough. Tony, you need to verify the technical claims before we go any further. Marcus, we will schedule another emergency board meeting Monday night to debate the validity of this fine. Debate the fine, Gary. But the board must acknowledge the precedent, Marcus stated firmly. If Max's single woof is worth $250, Brenda's 30 minutes of 95 dB screaming is worth $7,000. That's the rule you signed off on. And until you rule otherwise, Ms. Sterling is indebted to the Community General Fund. As the trio retreated, defeated and fuming, Marcus knew he had won the immediate confrontation. But the look in Brenda's eyes, pure, unfiltered malice, told him she wouldn't wait for Monday's meeting. She had just lost her money and her authority in front of an HOA consultant and the perpetually subservient Gary. She would escalate now, bypassing the rules entirely. The $7,000 fine became neighborhood gossip in a matter of hours. The email thread, forwarded by Gary to the broader resident distribution list in a misguided attempt at transparency, became a viral phenomenon within Willow Creek Estates. For years, Brenda's tyrannical rule, the arbitrary fines, the aesthetic mandates, the sheer entitlement, had been a silent burden. Now, someone had hit back with data, logic, and a massive fine that stood to refill the community's depleted reserves. A few neighbors, emboldened, started sending Marcus supportive, encrypted messages. One family offered him the use of their private security camera footage aimed at Brenda's house, showing late-night party traffic. Another offered testimony about the constant running of her industrial-grade pool pumps. Marcus was no longer fighting alone. He was the rallying point for a long-suffering populace. That night, Marcus checked the Guardian protocol. Max was asleep on the couch. The logs were clean, but he couldn't shake the feeling of dread. Brenda was predictable in her entitlement, but unpredictable in her desperation. Her next move would be physical, irrational, and designed to cause maximum personal anguish. He spent the evening setting up another layer of defense. He installed 3 tiny high-definition, low-light motion cameras. One covered the gate and the driveway, replacing the older, cheap unit. Another was angled discreetly toward Max's favorite section of the backyard. The third was aimed at the utility pole where the main power line for his gate and the Guardian enforcer systems ran. At 3:15 a.m., the first motion alert woke him. Marcus grabbed his phone. The notification was for the utility pole camera. He watched the live feed in stunned silence. A figure dressed entirely in black and wearing what looked like a surgical mask was standing at the base of the utility pole. The figure was moving slowly, purposefully. They carried a pair of heavy-duty bolt cutters. The figure reached up, located the thick, braided power conduit that ran directly to Marcus's gate and buried electronics, and with a swift, brutal action snapped the line. Sparks flared violently in the pre-dawn darkness, followed by the immediate chilling sound of silence as the power was killed. The gate was dead. The enforcer was offline. The guardian was inert. The figure, recognizing the sound of the line snapping, quickly turned, sprinting back into the dense landscaping. The camera caught the briefest glimpse of long blonde hair escaping the hood, and a distinct, large gold watch glinting on a wrist. It was Brenda. Not some hired hand, but Brenda herself, physically violating his property in the dead of night, committing a clear act of criminal sabotage. Marcus's blood ran cold, not from fear, but from the sudden, stark realization of how far she was willing to go. She wasn't playing the HOA game anymore. She was playing a game of criminal destruction. He reviewed the footage. The image of the gold watch and the unmistakable gait of the figure burned into his mind. He had her, on camera, but the gate was dead. He knew he couldn't just call the police yet. If he did, the narrative would spin. A neighbor dispute over a fine, which escalated into minor property damage. Brenda's lawyers would paint her as a victim of harassment driven to an emotional breakdown, and the HOA consultant would back her claim that Marcus was a cyberstalker. He needed to escalate the crime, not the complaint. He looked at the dead power light on his external monitor. The entire technical fortress, the enforcer, the guardian, was down. He was exposed. He quickly dressed, grabbed a powerful flashlight, and walked outside, stepping carefully over the severed power line near the utility pole. He checked the main gate, which was now stuck in the closed position, a massive, immovable piece of aluminum. He moved toward the rear of the property, where Max often spent his mornings. The backyard motion camera feed was now displaying an alert, unexpected activity. Zone B. He played the clip. The same black-clad figure, having cut the gate power, was now creeping along his back fence line. They reached into a canvas bag and pulled out a handful of what looked like bright blue-green pellets, small synthetic chips. The figure then quietly tossed the pellets over the fence and into the flower beds near Max's dog door, before disappearing into the night. Marcus froze, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. Blue-green pellets. He knew what that was. He had read the community bulletins about local garden hazards. Snail bait. Highly toxic to dogs, specifically golden retrievers, who were draw. Marcus spent Saturday and Sunday in a state of icy, hyper-focused calm. His lawyer, Anya Petrov, flew in Sunday morning. She was a woman built of razor-sharp intellect and tailored charcoal suits. And after watching the edited footage, the slow, deliberate snip of the power line, the chilling distribution of the blue-green snail bait, the unmistakable flash of the gold watch, she didn't speak for a full minute. When she finally did, her voice was low, devoid of emotion. Mr. Thorne, this moves beyond an injunction. This is probable cause for a full criminal investigation and a civil suit that will strip her of every last asset she holds dear. We are not just ending her tenure on the HOA board. We are making it impossible for her to remain in this community, possibly even in this state. Their strategy was meticulous, a surgical strike planned for the emergency board meeting on Monday night. The meeting was Brenda's last stage, a venue she intended to use for her triumphant return, where she would declare Marcus's $7,000 fine invalid and demand his social and financial ruin. Anya's plan was to let Brenda climb the ladder to her highest point of arrogance, then saw the rungs out from under her. Marcus's part was simple. Be the calm, professional architect of consequences. He had secured the snail bait in a sealed evidence bag and uploaded the final, devastating edit of the video reel to a secured cloud server. He had also reached out to the handful of neighbors who had previously offered support, discreetly advising them that the matter regarding the noise violations is coming to a definitive resolution Monday night, and attendance is strongly recommended. Monday night at the Willow Creek Estates clubhouse felt like a highly charged courtroom drama. The room was packed. Neighbors who had never attended a meeting before, including the family who had offered security footage and the silent dentist's Robert, were present, drawn by the viral email thread and the promise of a showdown. Brenda Sterling arrived 15 minutes late, dressed in a vibrant red power suit. She strode to the head table, exchanging an air kiss with Gary, who looked pale and ill. She carried herself with the assured confidence of a predator who believed its prey was cornered. Marcus and Anya sat side by side in the front row, their silence a counterweight to the tension. Gary cleared his throat, opening the meeting with a nervous tremor. Welcome. The purpose of this emergency session is to address two matters: the validity of the gate damage claims and the formal complaint and fine issued by Mr. Thorne to Ms. Sterling regarding noise violations. Brenda didn't wait. She grabbed the microphone, her voice dripping with artificial sympathy. Let's be clear. This entire episode has been engineered by Mr. Thorne. This so-called $7,000 fine is baseless retaliation. It's an act of cyberbullying. I am not a noise polluter. I am a dedicated board member who merely installed authorized surveillance to protect all of us from the single biggest source of nuisance in the community. Mr. Thorne's continuously barking dog. She gestured toward Marcus with dramatic flair. He has committed a clear violation of trust and possibly state cybersecurity laws. I move that the board immediately nullify his ridiculous fine, issue him the maximum fine for his unauthorized gate alterations, and demand his resignation from the community due to harassment. A murmur ran through the crowd. Brenda looked smug, leaning back, confident that her political maneuver had sealed the discussion. Gary was about to second the motion when Anya Petrov stood up, her movement sharp and deliberate. Mr. President, members of the board, residents, Anya's voice cut through the air, precise and commanding. Before the board votes on this motion, we must introduce one final, unavoidable piece of evidence. This evidence renders all previous discussions regarding fines, gates, and noise monitoring wholly irrelevant. Brenda scowled. Who is this woman? We haven't recognized outside counsel. Anya Petrov, representing Mr. Thorne, Anya stated, ignoring Brenda. My client will not be defending his fine tonight. Instead, we are here to discuss felony criminal charges. The entire room went dead silent. Brenda's smug expression dissolved into a mask of pure terror. Marcus stepped up to the podium, connecting a small black USB stick to the main clubhouse monitor. He didn't look at Brenda. He addressed the board and the residents. Last Saturday at 3:15 a.m., the gate system that Ms. Sterling repeatedly attacked was successfully shut down. This was not a malfunction. This was criminal sabotage. He clicked the remote. The screen flared to life, showing the high-definition, low-light footage from his utility pole camera. The video played in stark silence. The masked figure, the bolt cutters, the flash of sparks as the thick, braided power line was snapped. The figure turned, sprinting away, and in the final frame, the camera caught the glint of the long blonde hair and the distinct large gold watch on the wrist. Gasps filled the room. Brenda's face was now paper white, her breath shallow. Marcus paused the footage, then continued calmly. The board can debate whether this constitutes misdemeanor vandalism. However, the subsequent event recorded just moments later escalated this to attempted felony animal cruelty. Ms. Sterling, having disabled my security systems, then proceeded to the boundary of my yard. He clicked again. The scene shifted to the backyard camera. The same black-clad figure appeared, reaching into a canvas bag, and scattering handfuls of the toxic blue-green snail bait exactly where Max, his dog, frequented the yard. Max's family. Marcus's voice cracked slightly, the only outward sign of the raw emotion he felt. He is a golden retriever, a breed known to be fatally attracted to the sweet smell of this specific poison. This was not an act of petty spite. This was an attempt to murder my dog. Marcus turned directly to the silent, petrified Brenda. The gate was a disagreement. The fine was a negotiation. This act, Ms. Sterling, is the definitive end of your privilege. You moved from administrative harassment to attempted criminal destruction of life. He pulled the evidence bag containing the poison pellets out of his blazer pocket and placed it on the table. This morning, my lawyer, Ms. Petrov, filed criminal complaints with the county sheriff's office and secured a temporary restraining order, effective immediately. Ms. Sterling is not only facing charges for criminal sabotage and attempted animal cruelty, but she is now legally prohibited from stepping within 500 feet of my property, my person, or my dog. This meeting is now adjourned, as Ms. Sterling is technically in violation of a court order just by being in this room with me. Anya stepped forward, taking command. Mr. President Gary, Ms. Sterling's actions represent a clear, present, and physical danger to the community. Her use of HOA resources for personal criminal vengeance is an unprecedented abuse of power. We demand her immediate permanent removal from the board and restitution for all damages. Before Gary could muster a reply, the heavy front doors of the clubhouse swung open, and two uniformed county sheriff's deputies walked in, led by a plainclothes detective. They moved directly toward Brenda Sterling. The detective displayed his badge. "Brenda Sterling? We have a warrant for your arrest concerning felony charges of criminal mischief and animal cruelty." Brenda let out a sound that was half shriek, half sob. "This is insane. I'm a board member. This is defamation! Gary, tell them! Tell them he's a liar!" Gary, finally seeing the reality of the situation, the evidence, the lawyer, the uniformed police, sank back into his chair, covering his face with his hands. I can't, Brenda. The board accepts your resignation. Effective immediately." Brenda fought, thrashing against the deputies, screaming about her rights and her lawyer, her face contorted in a final, ugly picture of defeated entitlement. As the deputies escorted the distraught, screaming woman past the stunned, silent neighbors, the gold watch glinted brightly one last time under the clubhouse lights. The entire community watched, absorbing the spectacle of their tyrant being removed. Not by bureaucracy, but by the cold, irrefutable evidence of her own malice. Marcus stood by the podium, his posture finally relaxing. He glanced at Anya, who gave him a slight professional nod. He had turned the tables not by playing her dirty games, but by elevating the conflict to a domain where data, proof, and the law were absolute, untouchable forces. The gate was fixed, Max was safe, and the tyranny of the HOA Karen was over. Ended not with a single fine, but with the undeniable spectacle of justice. Marcus collected his items, walked out the door, and breathed the clean, cool night air, leaving the silent, shocked community to process the weight of the new peace.